Moving on to the final bit of tonight's show, and that is our movie review. And surprise, surprise, we are actually reviewing a movie from this year.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is Avengers Endgame. The conclusion to 22 movies, a 22 movie series, a franchise over 11 years. And, you know, uh, I'm going to say it.
Spoilers ahead.
I know. I'm going to say this right now. Spoilers ahead. So if you're probably like the 5 or 6 people left in California who haven't seen this movie, then just mute this part. But consider yourself fully warned.
All right. Are you done? Are the people that have not seen it gone away?
Yes.
Okay, good.
We just lost some viewers. Okay, perfect. Let's go. All right. So yes, Endgame is kind of the conclusion to last year's Infinity War, which was another great outing from Marvel Disney. And I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was great. Someone who has been a Marvel fan, pre Iron Man 2008. But because I was a fan of Marvel Comics, but also as a fan of the MCU since Iron Man.
Yeah, as I stated, what was it last week? How I actually went through all the MCU films and watched them. All of them outside of Captain Marvel before watching Endgame this week. I had to say, like I said, I appreciate the movies a lot more. They're a lot better than I initially thought. Like, when you just watch them in theaters, but watching them all back to back to back to back was really, man, it's really good and how they all connect. I love that. And I'll be honest, I was not that I wasn't a Marvel fan, because I do like comics, but outside of like Spider-Man or the X-Men, I didn't really know too much about some of the Marvel comics. I'm more of a DC guy. But after watching through the MCU films and honestly, they're using their third and fourth tier characters in the MCU.
That's right.
And the fact that they made it into what it is mind-blowing. Because nobody knew who outside of Marvel fans, knew who the hell Iron Man was before it started. Outside of playing Marvel versus Capcom, I had no idea who the hell Iron Man was, or War Machine, or any of those guys.
Right. Yeah, you're right. These were second and third string characters. I mean, particularly Guardians of the Galaxy. Talk about something coming out of left field. Nobody knew who Star Lord was. Nobody knew who Gamora was. Nobody knew who Rocket the Raccoon was.
And I have to say, I think Rocket Raccoon is now one of my favorite characters.
Me too.
Oh man, he's awesome.
I know.
Well, and I'll say this because I love the smartass characters in comics,
right?
And he's right up my alley.
Right. Could you adjust your camera? You're a bit fuzzy.
I'm a bit fuzzy.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Perfect.
Is that better?
Yeah. Just that. Yeah. Just got out of focus. But yeah. Even though, I do. In terms of Guardians characters, Rocket Raccoon is my favorite. I think overall, my favorite character would be Captain America.
I'm still a Spider-Man guy. I think he's still my favorite Marvel character, but I definitely appreciate a lot more of them now.
Right, but more important. I mean, as much as I was a fan of Captain America before the movies, but these movies I think helped me, help solidify more my my choice in Captain America being my favorite.
Definitely, 100%.
Because I just because because I just loved like the arc that they gave him within the MCU. First being kind of like almost like the parody version of like the propaganda, you know, um, propaganda figure, and then in Winter Soldier turning him into someone who an absolute man a moral man in a morally gray world, and
Yeah.
then in Civil War, making him like the full on like anti-establishment character, to bringing it to kind of almost within Infinity War and Endgame, making him again kind of like that symbol of hope to rally behind.
Yeah, it was I definitely have a bigger appreciation, at least for the MCU, Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they did a great job with him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Iron Man of the MCU, I would have to say Iron Man's been my favorite. I love Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
mean, man, talk about inspired casting. Because originally they were gonna get Tom Cruise to be Tony Stark.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow.
could you imagine? Yeah, could you
I
imagine an
think that would have been
MCU?
interesting too.
Yeah, imagine an MCU with Tom Cruise as Iron Man.
I think that would have been interesting too. By the way, I think he would have
Right.
done pretty good, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It would be just a little. It would just be different. But really, I mean, I think you know Marvel got so lucky with Robert Downey Jr. And maybe I shouldn't say lucky because I know like his casting was thanks to Jon Favreau, the original director of the first Iron Man. Because he recognized the parallels of Tony Stark the character and Robert Downey Jr. the actor. Because
right,
both the characters were these kind of larger than life characters who also like struggled with like substance abuse,
right,
and but then ultimately found like a sort of redemption.
absolutely.
And so a bit of an inspired casting on the part of Jon Favreau.
Yeah, no, I think Robert Downey Jr. I think portrayed Iron Man really well. Uh, definitely, definitely made me love Iron Man,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I don't know if I said this. Maybe I said this last week, but I know I've said it to you where actually, it made me want to like go. It's like, well, damn, I didn't think I was gonna give a shit about Iron Man. Now let me go take a look at the comics and let me learn more about Iron Man and some of the stories behind that, and
Mm-hmm.
I felt that a lot about like a lot of the characters.
Right. Yeah, because even like Thor, like who would have thought like Thor would be such an amazing character as well.
I never knew I was gonna give a goddamn about Thor either.
Right? Yeah, because it's like here's this Marvel character, but then he's also has his own kind his own thing in Norse mythology, but Stanley did his thing, and apparently he was a pretty popular character back in the day, but it's like and the worry was like how do you translate Thor from the comics into a movie, and I think they did an admirable job with it. Um, Admittedly, the first two, aren't that, spectacular. But I think in terms of setting up the character and like his like kind of backstory, I thought they were serviceable.
I think what makes them and because I'm going to disagree a little bit in saying that like that they're not great films.
Mm-hmm.
I think what helps is watching it through the context of all like the movies and through the MCU, and when you do that, it I think it because I actually appreciated those films a lot better. This like well, I've seen them now like what, like 3 or 4 times, but it's like watching it throughout the whole context of the MCU.
Hmm.
Damn,
Okay, fair enough.
I think they're better than people give them credit for. Same thing with Iron Man 3. I know some people didn't like that one.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
actually
no, I definitely have an appreciation for Iron Man 3 that not that that is not shared by a lot of people.
because
But
because the thing is why those movies you kind of need those movies because you start to see the character development of like Thor and the character development of Tony Stark slash Iron Man and when they get to the next movies of like the Avengers or the next part you see why they do what they do because it had you if you don't watch Iron Man 3 and you jump to Winter Soldier for in essence Tony Stark kind of just out of nowhere kind of changes his how he views things and it's like
mm,
but if you see all of them together you see how why he kind of goes the direction he does and kind of why he signs the Sokovia Accords and why he even brings it to the table to the rest of the Avengers, and vice versa with Captain America. If you don't watch his films and like how his character develops, it doesn't make sense of why he's like, there's no way in hell I'm going to sign this, and
right.
why he defects. And I
Hmm.
think that's why these movies were. Some will say it's like, oh, it's just for kids and it's just comic books and it's stupid. And it's like they're actually a lot more complex and they have there's a lot of complexity and interesting thought discussions that can be had about the films. Do I think these films are like the best films of all time? No. But do I think they're good films and have rewatchability? Absolutely.
Yeah. Kind of backtracking to Civil War, that last fight between Iron Man and Captain America, that is just like if that doesn't like make your heart wrench a little bit, you should check your pulse because that there was no victory in that fight, and even
No.
and there was that part where like Iron Man is like Captain America is just like pounding on Iron Man and like he grabs his shield, like he smashes his helmet off, and then he raises it up, raises the shield up, and Tony Stark like has like this real dread that that Captain America is gonna kill him, and he raises his arm to block him, but and he comes down only to show that he just like cracks his arc reactor to just stop him, but like there you
Yeah.
kind of share that dread in Tony Stark, and it's like, oh my god, this guy's gonna kill me.
Right.
Right, and it
And
like
the
it,
whole conversation that Black Panther has with the actual villain of that film,
yeah,
it's
Zemo.
like yeah, and it was mainly about creating dissension among the Avengers, and it's like it's like you did not win. It's like didn't I?
Right. Yeah, because like his whole thing was like, yeah, I could have, I could attack them, and I could, and I could have I could have brought them down, but they would have just got, they would have just rebuilt, and come at me stronger. But if I make them fight amongst them, if I make them destroy themselves, then I win.
Yeah, and you could argue that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did. But then but then back to that fight, like at the end, like when Captain America's walking away with Bucky, you know, in almost like in almost in a childish manner, Tony Stark, spits out like it's like you don't deserve that shield. It's like my father made that shield, and like it's like this, these aren't the words of a a victorious man. This is kind of like the last throw of of desperation. This is the last like kind of punch that someone throws in desperation. But and you can see that in Captain America, he knows who he is. He knows he's Captain America with or without that shield, and that's why that's why he was able to drop it and walk away because he knows that being Captain America isn't just about the shield. It's about it's about the person that wields it.
Yeah,
and like that kind of symbolism, that kind of depth, like from a from a comic book movie, from a superhero movie.
It was yeah, it was a gut wrenching movie actually.
Right, yeah. And some might say like it was undone by the subsequent scene where Tony gets the package and it's like the burner phone and like the note from Cap. But I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't the burner phone. That was after whatchamacallit? That was after Civil War.
Well, that was at the end of Civil War.
Right.
It was like one of
But
the it
like
was
I
like one
said,
of the last scenes.
yeah, but that doesn't make Winter Soldier any like less of a film. I think it still makes that a really powerful one.
Right. Right. Anyway, well, back
Um,
to Endgame. Um,
I think this was a perfect ending to the this phase, or like the was it this is the end of phase 3, and it was a kind of a fitting ending to some of the characters,
mhm.
at least with the as far as the iteration of like with those particular actors, um, and obviously the idea behind it was they are trying to get back at Thanos and try to recover the people that were lost. And initially, it looks like as if that's not going to happen, because when they do find him, he had because they saw him snap his fingers again, thinking that he took out another half of another planet or
Or
something
yeah, or
like
he did
that.
some, or yeah, he just did, or he did something else. Interestingly enough, mostly every scene in like the initial couple of trailers, they're all from like the first like 20 minutes of the movie.
Right.
And so, like amazingly, the Russos did not give up anything about this movie, and so kudos to them. I mean, later on, like the third or fourth trailer, you get a little bit more, but nothing is really spoiled. And so,
Yeah, I usually like try to stay away from after like the first trailer. I try to stay away from stuff.
mhm,
Um, and so yeah, that none of that was ruined for me.
right.
But
But I
like
think like the Russos, they have like this reputation of putting in like or creating shots that they know they're not going to use, but it's just for the trailer.
yeah,
Um, So I mean, like their level of secrecy is like beyond that of any like NSA agent.
yeah, definitely.
Um, yeah, but again agree with Robert. This was a satisfying end or satisfying such a satisfying conclusion for all the characters. Um, we,
But the reason, like, what I liked, the reason why I really liked it was because the whole premise was to he was trying to like undo what Thanos had done as far as to bring the people back,
uh-huh.
and the thinking was that like they could recover the stones and maybe like recover everyone that was lost, all the Asgardians that were killed, like Loki
Well,
and
at
all
least
those
the ones that they
guys,
were dusted. Oh
or
no, no, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
the
That was
ones
the,
that were
that was the
done.
later plan. You're right.
But I'm saying like it was like a way for them to like we're gonna get everybody back, and the realization when they do find Thanos is that he actually destroyed the stones. He destroy
Yeah,
snapped them out of
he snapped he
existence.
snapped again, but it was just for the stones, and like yeah, that heartbreaking reveal because initially they all like kind of ambush him and grab him, and Thor like chops off his arm, and then Rocket looks at the gauntlet and it's like there's no stones here, and it's like and the reason why he destroyed them, he said that because of temptation. And so and like
And
and with that you understand that this wasn't like some some megalomaniacal plan to hold on to or retain power for Thanos. This was a mission. This was like a life's
He
purpose.
believed in
This
his
was a life's
mission.
purpose.
Yeah.
There was no
Which
ego involved in this. He thought he was doing something moral. Um,
and I think that's even that's the scary part of it, is he thought he was doing something that was right.
mhm. Right, but then like and also, and then you have like that kind of like soul crushing beheading of Thanos by Thor, which by no means was a victory. Like when he chopped it off, I think everyone in the theater felt like that wasn't a victory.
There was no
was just
victory in that.
there was no victory in
Yeah.
that.
And then it's like, well, and then obviously like there's the screen, like 5 years later. So
Right.
they all of those guys dealt with that pain, in their own way. Some more successfully than others. And
Right, because you have Cap running like a counseling group, a survivors group to help people move on and kind of mirroring what Sam did in Winter Soldier when he held that support group for the veterans.
right.
But and then you see kind of Black Widow take a kind of leadership role back at Avengers HQ, and she's like they have like the debrief with all the other like Avengers with the Guardians, Nebula, and Rocket, and then you have Captain Marvel and Rhodey, and I forget.
The general from
The general from Black Panther, Okoye, I believe.
I think that was her name. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. The funny thing is, I know that actress's name because she's in The Walking Dead. I don't remember her name, the name of her character in the movie.
What is her actual name?
Danai Gurira.
Oh, okay. Wait, does she actually have that accent in real life, or?
No, she doesn't.
Okay, just checking. I didn't think she did because I've seen a couple episodes of Walking Dead and I don't remember her having that kind of accent.
I don't think she has that accent in real life. So
right, yeah, kind of like Chadwick Boseman. He doesn't have that accent either. But I think he pulls it off pretty well.
Yeah, I think he's a great Black Panther, actually.
Yeah. Right, and then you see like how you were saying how a lot of people have moved on, some more successfully than others. One being Tony and him and Pepper settling down and starting a family. They have a daughter, which they kind of alluded, or which they kind of spoiled the name in Infinity War, Morgan, and he's by all intents and purposes has moved on. And Bruce Banner Hulk has also moved on a bit in that he's finally resolved the different parts of himself and now is the
him and Hulk are one.
Right, yeah. Like they're like Hulk's body, but mostly Banner's personality and intellect, which I think was borrowed from the comic books when Hulk became Professor Hulk. When
That's right.
Yeah, because in the comic books, they do something similar where Banner and Hulk they somehow reconcile with themselves, and and Hulk is like smart.
Yeah. But the one who I think took it the hardest as far as like for the failure was Thor, who man.
Well, I mean, actually, I think he's like one of the hardest because one, he definitely has like that one survivor's guilt and also regret because even in Infinity War, Thanos kind of mocks him and said like, "Oh, you should have gone for the head." And because of his failure, the snap was able to still happen. And yeah, Thor ends up becoming this fat, bearded schlub, schlub of former like a very fat shadow of himself.
Yeah. I mean, you could also argue that like Hawkeye kind of goes
Right.
through
Yeah.
like
That's what
a
I was alluding to. As Thor being one of the event, being one of the Avengers that took it the hardest, and Hawkeye being the other, because you see in uh, the opening of the movie where he's having like this nice day with his family. He has the ankle monitor strapped to his leg, and he's giving archery lessons to his daughter. And they're just having a nice picnic on their farm, and all of a sudden, like the daughter disappears, and then he turns around, and then his wife and two sons are gone, and he just and then he I think he spirals, and then he becomes inconsolable, and then he becomes the Ronin persona that was in the comic books, where he becomes like just like this killer.
yeah.
And that's actually one of the things. That's actually one of the things that they were discussing in the holographic debrief with the other Avengers. Rhodey goes to Mexico City, where Barton is rumored to have been seen. And then when Rhodey War Machine gets there, it's just like a bloodbath. I mean, they don't show it to us, but it's described to us as something very graphic, and as something that Clint would have to kind of pay for with more jail time.
Right. The what the, so what really saves the day is if you never watched Ant-Man and the Wasp, what we forget is that Scott Lang, Ant-Man, when they are kind of doing more research into the quantum realm,
Mm-hmm.
the other three of his group, Dr. Pym, um, Janet Pym, and Hope Van Dyne, they are Thanos into
Yeah, they're
non-existence.
like when he's in the quantum realm, they get dusted, and so he is trapped within the quantum realm, and and then a little bit of space time manipulation, and when he comes out, to him only 5 hours have gone by, but for everyone else 5 years have gone by. Um, and one of the first things
And
that he does is he happens upon this giant memorial for all the people that got dusted, and his first thoughts were of his daughter, so he goes and runs and he tries to look for her name, but it wasn't there, but he finds his name there. And I guess people thought that he got dusted back then.
right.
uh, but I thought it
And
was pretty
what I
funny
think what's
that that a rat crawling over the control panels is what uh, releases him. Um,
right.
and it's funny, a YouTuber was saying like, "Oh, that wasn't any ordinary rat. That was a sentient rat. I smell Marvel's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover."
Oh, that'd be interesting. Um, but what ended up happening is that he goes and he sees his daughter and sees how much time has. He actually realizes how much time has passed,
Right.
and from there he goes and tries to find what's left of the Avengers, and
Mm-hmm.
it's through that it's like, well, I think we might be able to manipulate the quantum realm to fix this,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of like how they end up how the movie kind of like really gets going, and what they obviously they go to try to find Tony, who would be the guy to talk to about it.
Right.
he initially declines, and they start doing experiments anyway with Bruce Banner. But then they gave Tony the itch to solve it,
Right.
and he goes and he solves the issue and like finds a way. It's like, yeah, it's doable. We can do this, and that's kind of where the movie really gets going. And they jump through time to pick out those Infinity Stones. But what we realized that is that they're not going to be able to bring everybody back, but the ones that were, snapped out of existence by Thanos, they can get those guys back. So guys that were, in the first part of Infinity War, like on the Asgardian ship, those guys that were killed, like
Right. The ones that were like stabbed and killed, like Heimdall, and
Yeah.
Loki, they're gone.
Right. And so there's that. And the thing is, like, so I think that to me the most heartbreaking scene, or what was really tough was the when they go to get the Soul Stone, when Hawkeye and Black Widow go to get the Soul Stone, and the fact that that getting that particular stone does require a sacrifice of something that you care about, like the ultimate sacrifice. And they're essentially like, it kind of reminded me of Spartacus, like where they're fighting to the death and one person dies and the other person gets crucified to death. It's kind of like there's no real good like option.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, they're all, they're both, they're, at the precipice, and they're both kind of, talking and working things out. It's like, oh yeah, there's only one, there's only one choice for this. Like, yeah, you're right, only one choice. And they slowly start to realize that they're talking about themselves and not each other. And so like this kind of like this almost like, what is it? How to describe it?
I think part of it is because Hawkeye believed that with all the killing that he had done over the past 5 years, that he deserved to die.
Right.
Whereas Black Widow is like, I don't have anybody else. You have a family that might come back because of this.
Right.
And
Well,
it's like,
she definitely, I mean, given the 5-year time jump, she definitely starts to identify the Avengers as her family, and she's like, and I think she's like, just let me do this for my family, because like you were saying, like she has nobody else, and so.
And it's this is also like goes back to like watching the other movies where she talks about like how she wants to. I think it was in Age of Ultron, like getting rid of the red in her ledger.
Oh no, that was the first Avengers.
The first Avengers. Oh yeah. Okay, that's right.
Right, yeah, and there's always this allusion to this dark past, like
which
you said
we never got a Black Widow movie, so we don't really know the whole backstory.
Rumor has it that we are gonna get Black Widow movies, but they're probably gonna be pre Endgame, or probably even like pre Avengers, pre Iron Man even.
Yeah, keep talking.
Yeah, because like okay. Yeah, so like Robert was saying, there was always this illusion of wrongdoing in Black Widow's life. I mean, we kind of see that when she has the hallucination in Age of Ultron about her, the Red School, or or the Widow program, where they take girls and they train them in like ballet, and in in combat, and and guns, and then you kind of get and then also in Avengers, when when she's interrogating Loki, and Loki says like, oh, Barton told me everything, the hospital fire in some city in some South American country. Buenos Aires. Yes, that's right. Hospital fire in Buenos Aires, and and so Black Widow does have a past, and and she figures that this is the opportunity to make up for that. And so like there's like this really odd scramble by both of them to throw themselves off this ledge, um, like how Thanos threw Gamora off the ledge in Infinity War. But they try to stop each other. Uh, Widow like throws like an electrifying disc at Barton. Barton recovers and shoots an exploding arrow to like push her back, but you know but ultimately it comes down to um, they both kind of go over the edge, and Widow uses like her grappler to hold Barton to the ledge, and he's holding onto her arm, and she just kind of like forces him to let go, and then she falls, and then the two spires begin to glow, and then you find Barton back at the beginning with Soul Stone in hand. Um, uh,
It was just like understanding the sacrifice that had to have been made to get that.
right.
It was that was a rough scene.
Right, and and then you have because you have all the other Avengers, standing around, and Hulk, Professor Hulk even like grabs the bench and like chucks it into the lake, and and then you have Captain America promising like, oh, her death won't be in vain. We're gonna get them all back, and well, we kind of skipped over not skipped over, but let's kind of backtrack here and talk about when they went after the Space Stone, the Time Stone, and the Mind Stone, which was which they all figured out as to being all three of those stones were in New York during the invasion back in Avengers
Right.
1. And so Captain America, Ant-Man, Iron Man, and Hulk all go back to that time, and they concoct this plan to get the Tesseract and the Scepter away from their past selves, and also Shield, otherwise but also Hydra. And one of the funniest scenes I think was when Captain America goes into the elevator.
The elevator scene.
Yeah, the elevator scene, surrounded by Shield agents, but they're really Hydra agents. One Jasper Sitwell, and then Crossbones Rumlow, and kind of mirroring the elevator scene in Winter Soldier.
Right.
Him being surrounded by all those agents, and he says like, oh, Director Pierce has sent me to get the scepter from you guys, and to bring it to him directly. And it's like, oh, well, I didn't get any orders like that or something. And you think that it's going to be a repeat of Winter Soldier, but Steve Rogers goes up to Jasper Sitwell, Sitwell, and whispers, "Hail Hydra."
Yeah, and then, oh, okay.
And then they're like, oh, okay. And so they let him go.
I like that too. I was like,
which I think is a great redemption of what they kind of did in the comic books with the Fallen Kingdom run of Captain America, where they turned Captain America into a brainwashed Hydra agent.
Yeah.
But this one, like, they subverted it, and they made it a ploy. It's like, and it was so great. It was so satisfying.
Yeah, it was a very, very satisfying scene. Um, and then yeah, what they sent Hulk to get the time stone from the Ancient One.
Yeah, or at least they think that it's Doctor Strange, but it ain't. It turns out to be the Ancient One, and they have this conversation about like, oh, you can't take the stones because if you take the stones from the past and you create like these offshoots or
Divergence of time.
alternative timelines, and and so the Ancient One is reluctant to give up the time stone initially until Banner tells her, it's like, well, Stephen Strange gave up the time stone in the future, and she's like, what? And so like, but because she even said in Doctor Strange that he was the best of them, that she knew that he did it for a reason, and so she gives Banner the time stone. But then also makes promises and makes him promise to return the stones after they've all been used.
Yeah. So there was that. Then there was the Iron Man and Ant-Man were trying to get back the Tesseract, which they end up losing, and then have to go further back in time to the 70s to grab that.
Right. And then which you have just really quickly, they do the way they lose the Tesseract back then from Avengers is that Tony had the Tesseract in hand, but back up at the penthouse, um, you know, uh, like they all like cram into an elevator, and then Hulk tries to go in, and then Stark sends us like, whoa, 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 weight limit, take the stairs. And so, kind of like annoyed that he had to take the stairs, Hulk comes crashing through. He's like, Hulk hates stairs, and like crashes through the door, and then which knocks Tony back and knocks the briefcase holding the Tesseract open, and then at the feet of Loki, and Loki is able to grab it and use it and teleport himself away out, which does present an interesting little hiccup because
Yeah. He might come back at some point.
yeah, now there's a offshoot where it's kind of like the Schrodinger's cat thing, where because Loki did die, but now there is another alternative timeline where he lives.
Right.
So he's both dead and alive.
Yeah, that's true. So
Yeah.
he may come back.
Yeah, he may come
The
back.
God of Mischief. The God of Mischief rules.
Right. Yeah. Well, they after they lose the Tesseract, then they think about it, and like when was the Tesseract also around? And they realized back in like the 1970s, and so Tony and Steve, because they were also running out of Pym, since they only had enough Pym particles for a round trip to get to their time destination and then back to the present. Um, they also have to figure out where they can get more Pym particles, and it's like the old Shield base on the army base that Captain America was trained on. And so they go back to that time, and Tony retrieves the Tesseract, the Space Stone, but not before bumping into his father.
Yeah.
And they have like this really great scene where they kind of relate to each other. It's like, and he tells them that his name is Howard Potts. Howard because that's his dad's name, and then Potts because of Pepper. And then they're just kind of relating to each other. It's like, oh, because Tony hasn't been born yet, but so his dad is saying like, oh, I wonder if I'm gonna be a good dad, or and then he relates to his dad by saying like, well, yeah, I have a kid, it's terrifying, but it's great, it's gonna be great.
And then, that was a really touching scene.
Yeah, it was a very touching scene, and then Steve has kind of reunion of sorts with Peggy when he goes to retrieve the Pym particles, and some people, one of the personnel is kind of suspicious of him, so they call up MPs, and then he is kind of forced into going into this office, and then he goes into this office and he sees Peggy Carter, and he's all struck with the feels, and he's able to have like this moment with her, but not actually being able to interact with her though.
Yeah, and that was tough. And then the other what they sent, there was crap. Oh, they sent Thor and Rocket to retrieve the one of the stones
Yeah, the reality
from
stones.
yeah, the reality stone.
Yeah, and then like
And
the last time that they knew where it was on Asgard in Jane Foster
yep,
from
and
Thor: The Dark World.
that was kind of a really touching scene too, where Thor reconnects with his mom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it
And
was like great because like the mom, like he was trying to play it off like he was still Thor from that time, but I mean, anyone with eyeballs could see that it was different. But his mom, extra doubly knew that it wasn't him from that time.
I think the other thing that was kind of like with Thor was you could tell like he still had a lot of trouble dealing with everything that had happened,
Right.
and so he was not the Thor that we all have known up to this point. There was a lot of doubt and fear and anxiety
Mm-hmm.
that he was dealing with, and Rocket is kind of just like, "Come on, Thor, stop being a pussy and let's do this thing." And he wasn't like the leader of the Avengers that we all know and love, and I think what changed him was having that conversation with his mom, and then when after they got the stone, he kind of like reached out his hand, and the fact that his hammer came back to him,
Right.
showing
Yeah.
him
It's
that
like
he's
yeah.
still worthy of leadership in he was like, I think that gave him the confidence that he needed.
Right. Yeah. Just like because even though he was fat, he was like, oh, I'm still worthy. Yes.
Yeah.
So which I'm sure gave him a big boost of confidence. Funny thing was when Rocket was being chased and the Asgardian guards shouted out, "He's like, come back here, Rabbit!"
Yeah.
Which is like it's like wow, do Asgardian rabbits look like raccoons?
That good question. Uh, the other thing that was the other kind of funny thing is when they were getting what was the Power Stone, was that the one that was in Guardians of the Galaxy that
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
first
yeah.
one?
Mm-hmm.
It when they went to go get the Power Stone, they were it was Nebula and War Machine. They go to retrieve that one, and it was that very first scene in Guardians of the Galaxy where Star-Lord is
Yeah,
trying
he's
to get
dancing
that.
to Redbone, "Come and Get Your Love." But
Yeah, and
it's
so
seen
it starts.
from like the outside perspective, so he is you don't hear the music. Only it's only a Star Lord that can hear the music, and so you just see like this. You just see him kind of dancing around.
And it's like, and War Machine is like, is he always this stupid? It's like, yes.
Like pretty much, yeah. And so
I thought it was great seeing that scene again, but from like the outside perspective.
right, yeah. And then
Oh,
but
that was great.
so they were able to get the Power Stone, but not without a hiccup because for some reason Nebula's
She's a cyborg.
yeah, she's a cyborg, so she has like these these cybernetic parts which somehow link to her past self. which
Yeah.
yeah, which then kind of alerted Thanos of what was to come of the future. And so kind of like Trojan horse style, they switch nebulas. So and since the 5 years since the snap, Nebula got a fresh orange head skull plate put in,
Yeah.
which differentiated herself from the past Nebula. And so, to disguise herself, past Nebula takes that orange piece and puts it into her own head, and kind of does double, kind of plays double agent uh, on her end, and and so when they get back, they assemble the Infinity Stones into a gauntlet that Tony makes, and they all discuss like who's gonna do the snap, and Thor kind of volunteers, and everyone's just kind of like, nah, bro, you're not up for this. And then and then it's revealed that the radiation that's given off from the Infinity Stones is gamma radiation, and so
Which the only one that can do that is the Hulk.
yeah, or the person who's most likely to survive then is the Hulk, because of his exposure to gamma radiation. And so
So technically, you could argue that Captain America could have done that too, because that's technically how he became Captain America. Because the Hulk became the Hulk because they were trying to recreate the the whole
right,
Steve.
right. Well, at least in the
Steve Rogers.
MCU, yes. Um, they're in the MCU, like the reason why Hulk becomes the Hulk is because they're trying to recreate, Dr. Erskine's formula and process for turning, Steve into a super soldier, and in Captain America, the first Avenger, he says that he's going to bombard him with Vita rays. Um, and people didn't know exactly what Vita rays were, and so they did experiments, and Bruce Banner postulated that maybe Vita rays are gamma rays, and so like with a variation of the super soldier formula, he then exposes himself to gamma radiation, which then subsequently turns him into the Hulk.
Yeah, but anyways, but I digress. But they realize that, or Bruce realizes that he's the only one that can really do it, and so he ends up taking on the new Infinity Gauntlet, and he does the snap, and then it's
but very specifically, it was agreed upon that they wouldn't try to undo the first snap, and reset time, but they would just bring back the people that were snapped away.
Yeah, and because they realized that doing anything else would destroy like the time space continuum.
Yeah, or make things worse.
Right.
And so he does that, and then like kind of assigned to that, you then hear a bird, which is funny because it does, because like the whole purpose of the snap was to snap away half of the population of the universe, and that includes like all living things. So birds, plants, animals, what have you.
Right.
So not just people. And so and then so immediately after you kind of you hear these birds chirping, and then the secondary clue comes when Hawkeye's phone rings, and then it's his wife Laura.
And so it's like, oh, and it's like, and then they realize it worked,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, because then that's when past Nebula springs into action and brings past Thanos to the present.
Yeah.
Which comes at a very like kind of convenient way. But we'll maybe get into that a little bit later. But anyways, Thanos' ship, comes through the quantum realm and out into the present, and he immediately bombs Avengers headquarters, and then he bombs it. He bombs the crap out of it, and then some of the Avengers are trapped far underground. Rocket, War Machine, and Hulk are trapped under this rubble. And Hulk is holding up the rubble, and then Ant-Man is he to save himself he goes micro, and he's just like kind of like floating around the debris, and then Hawkeye survives, and he has the gauntlet, but then all of a sudden you hear like Outriders, those black and gold like beast things from Infinity War, and then he then proceeds to book it, and I don't know. You've seen it more recently than I do.
So from there, it's like the battle begins, and obviously, like Thanos is trying to regather the gauntlet and to kind of uh, do what he had been planning to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like where the final battle is based off of that,
Mm.
and so it's kind of like it's mainly initially it's Iron Man, Thor, Captain America that fight Thanos, and they end up like they're starting to lose.
Right, it's crazy because this is Thanos without the gauntlet, and he's still like holding his own against three of the Avengers,
Right,
arguably three of the most powerful.
and that's when the those that were lost come back.
Right. Well,
So
first, like,
Doctor
yeah, they get
Strange,
the crap kicked out of them, and and Captain America's shield gets broken by Thanos, and but not before craziest of crazy things happen. Captain America wields Mjolnir.
yeah, and which you kind of see an allusion to that in Avengers: Age of Ultron.
Right. And it's funny because then like Thor lets out this "I knew it,"
Yeah,
kind of hinting that he knew from Age of Ultron, because maybe like when he moved it, he Captain America could have lifted it back then, but to kind of like spare Thor's feelings, he didn't lift it.
maybe.
I mean, yeah,
Uh,
I mean that's one possibility. Because I mean, like if he was able to like make it like budget a little bit, then arguably he probably could have lifted it.
it's very very possible.
Right? Because if it just like, because it wouldn't just like, because if he really wasn't worthy back then, and he wouldn't even able to like kind of like make it squeak, you know? Because
Right.
the squeak comes from when because when the surface of the hammer and the surface of the glass table like kind of come into friction, and so like that wouldn't have even able to been happen if he wasn't able to lift it.
The so there was that, and then all the other Avengers make their return.
Right, via Doctor Strange, like sling ring portals, and it's great because like you hear over the you hear Sam's voice over the comms, and he's like Cap, you there? It's like on your left, and then all of a sudden like the portal will open and he comes flying through. And it's a great payoff to like of course Winter Soldier when in the opening scenes where they're like running and Captain America is obviously outpacing Sam, and every time he does he's on the left, so as he runs by he goes on your left.
Yeah, I
And so
forgot about that, but yeah, you're right. That may so there's just like all these like kind of like great payoffs, and there's a lot of just this these great reunions that happen, and I'll be honest, I teared up a little bit just because there's a few that were just really, man, it was kind of heartwarming.
right? I mean, there was a bunch of times I teared up. There's like when Scott sees his daughter after 5 years, and what is it like when Thor talked to his mom, and then I got choked up when Tony talked to his dad.
Yeah,
You know,
and even when Tony and Peter Parker reunite.
yes, oh man, that was God. Oh man, that gave me chills. Um,
But
what is
the
it?
so then yeah, obviously then the battle is for the gauntlet.
Right. Oh, and
And
then like after like, cause like everyone comes, like freaking like the Wakandans come, the wizards from the wizard school come, and even like the
everybody,
Ravengers from Guardians of the Galaxy come
they're there
for this.
too.
Yeah, for this final battle, and the payoff of payoffs. Captain America, stands in front of his army, and he's like, and he cries out, "Avengers, assemble!"
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, because we were kind of teased that at the end of Age of Ultron, where he gets a new team assembled, and he's says Avengers, but it cuts off right when he's about to say assemble.
Yeah, and it's like just finally with that payoff too. It's like, man, you just get like the chills. Like, oh man, like it's just such an exciting. Like it's really the climax of the film,
Hmm.
and it's like Thanos nearly gets the gauntlet, and it
Right. There's
holds
like
it in
this.
his hand. Um,
Yeah. There's like this
but
kind of game of like football or keep away where first Clint has it, and then Black Panther shows up, and it's like Clint, give me the. It's like give me the gauntlet.
yeah, then
It's like
Spider
give it
Man
to
takes
me.
it.
And then he like takes it, he takes it, and then Spider Man comes and he grabs it, and then
The here now, okay, here's one of my few like uh parts of the movie that cause I don't like Captain Marvel. I don't like Brie Larson. I think just I don't know,
yeah,
something
I know,
about
I know what you're talking about.
but there's the scene where Spider-Man nearly like gets taken out, and not that like I said, I there's nothing against like female characters in the MCU because I actually do like a lot of them.
Hmm.
But that scene where like they're all like protecting Spider-Man, but it's only the female characters that are.
Yeah,
It's like
I know,
that
I
was
know.
that to me was like a statement of some sort.
Oh, really? You don't say.
That was like really like it couldn't have been like a mixture of like all the all the characters that could
Right?
have
Yeah,
fit.
not even like the premier characters. Like maybe some of like M'Baku or or Wong or
Yeah, I don't need to be all the
or
premier characters, but like it was
or
specifically only
Kraglin.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like so happened to be all the women, and like where were these? Like were they just like really that close around? No one was like scattered throughout the field. That they
Yeah.
weren't that separated that they could all come at this one time to be like girl power and like help Peter Park Spider Man.
I will say that's the only time I kind of like, yeah, it's like in the movie.
Right.
Uh,
No, I
but
get it. I get it.
yeah,
I get it.
yeah. But ultimately, like I said, I like those characters. I just saying that it's like, come
Yeah,
on.
Valkyrie, cool ass character. Wasp, cool ass character.
Well, they never really developed like Pepper with her like Iron Man
Oh
like.
yeah, that was another weird. That was a weird kind of jarring thing because you never seen her like. I mean, outside of Iron Man
Outside of Iron
3,
Man
where she
3.
uses the repulsor blaster. That's about the one time you really see her in like in armor. So it's like to have her there and then all of a sudden be like really proficient in using the armor. That was kind of weird.
Because we're never really like given any of that, like of her
Right. There's
ever
like
like
no
finding
scene
out.
where where like she's with like her daughter and like and like the daughter's like wearing the helmet again, and then she takes she grabs the helmet from her daughter and goes to go put it back onto the armor, and then like the daughter goes like it's like, oh mommy, why don't you ever wear what daddy made you? And then she kind of like kind of looks at the daughter and then looks at the armor and it's like kind of like that. I think maybe what's if there's because she knows like what kind of mission that they're on, so like maybe it's time for maybe it's time for me to suit up and get some practice or something something to allude that she's gonna do something with the suit,
Right.
like get in some like training with the suit.
But yeah, so like there's like I said, I like the majority of those characters. Just it was an odd scene. I think it
Yeah.
was kind of out of place.
Mm-hmm.
But what ends up happening is Iron Man finally gets a hold of the gauntlet and essentially makes the ultimate sacrifice to
Right.
eliminate Thanos and
Right.
his.
Well, there's like a little bit of a misdirect because the gauntlet does end up falling at Thanos' feet, and he's able to like get it on, and he's about to snap, and he then mirrors his future self because in the beginning he does say like, oh, I'm Thanos, future Thanos says like, oh, I'm inevitable, and and then past Thanos that comes to the future, says the same thing just as he's about to snap, but he snaps, but nothing happens, and then it's revealed that during like their skirmish, Iron Man was able to take a take away the uh, Infinity Stones and put it onto his suit, onto his glove, and and kind of in like full circle moment, he's about to snap, and to kind of counter what Thanos says when he says "I'm inevitable," he says "I am Iron Man," and boom.
And snaps them away into Thanos and his minions into non-existence.
Right. It's very interesting because another YouTuber who reviewed it, Endgame pointed out that there was a lot of similarity. Some of the things that happened to the in Infinity War happened to Thanos' forces. Like one, like Ebony Maw comes like kind of like the Peter Parker is like, oh, I don't feel good. He kind of walks towards Thanos. Kind of like reaching out to him. And then you also have uh, Proxima Midnight, that crazy horn chick with like the blue, like the crazy
Yeah,
blue mascara, and who's that guy with like the blade? I don't know, but apparently like them two are married, and so like you have like this kind of mirror of Wanda and Vision when at the end of Infinity War, Wanda like throws her head back and like lets it happen.
yeah,
So you kind of have a lot of like parallels to what happened to the Avengers in Infinity War, and then what happens to Thanos' forces in Endgame. And there's like this really great exchange between Scarlet Witch and Thanos, which is it kind of breaks your heart too. But she's when after she is snapped back, she confronts him and says, "You took everything from me," and then
he's like,
because
I don't even
this is the
part.
past Thanos. He's like, I don't even know who you are.
That just pissed her off even more.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, and of course, the Tony makes the ultimate sacrifice, and because he's just a mere man, he can't take the radiation, and he ends up dying, and him and Peter have like that last moment, almost like the last moment, and then Pepper comes and like and tells him like, oh, you can rest now.
Yeah. And yeah, it was such a like you've been saying, it's like it was a fitting end to the whole thing. And I think the other like really touching moment was the fact because they had to return the Infinity Stones to their respective time periods, and so Captain America is the one that goes and does that, and they're like, for him, he has as much time as he needs, but for us, it's going to be like, for them, the rest of them, it should only be like 5 seconds, and then but he doesn't come back, and all of a sudden, like, they look over and there's someone sitting on a bench.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, what I thought was that with where he was sitting and like how he was sitting, I thought maybe he had like reverted back to his super soldier
pre-serum,
self.
yeah, pre-serum self.
That's initially what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
But it turned out like he had become an old man, and he's like, I decided to do some living that Tony always told me I should go and do.
Right.
And it turns out that he had gone back and danced and lived his life with Peggy Carter as he had always wanted, and because I think like every movie he was in, he would constantly look at that pocket watch with the picture of Peggy in it.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's true, yeah, because it was in the first Avengers, or no, yeah, it was in his first movie, Captain America: First Avenger, and it was also in Winter Soldier.
Yeah,
Did he do it in Civil War?
I think so.
I can't remember. I can't remember him taking. I can't remember him. I don't remember him taking it out. I know, like, he was a pallbearer at her funeral.
Yeah, and which is kind of like, because they did like allude to like him and like her niece, that was also part of Shield.
Right.
Like they alluded like they had a relationship, but even then, it still wasn't satisfying for him.
Right. Yeah, that must have been hella awkward when he was living his life and he, was holding Sharon in his arms.
It's like, I make out with you later in life.
Yeah, that's a little weird. It's like, yeah, it's like, he's like holding her. It's like, oh, I'm gonna make out with you one day. Ooh.
And he essentially ended up giving the Captain America mantle to Sam.
Yeah, Falcon. Yeah, and I'm okay with that. I know a lot of people was like, oh, why didn't you give it to Bucky? But
I don't think Bucky wanted it.
Well, also, for most of the 20th century and parts of the 21st century, he was known as a terrorist.
Yeah, exactly.
So how are you gonna pass off? It's like making Osama bin Laden the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Right, but I actually agree that like Sam was the right choice to be Captain America, to pass on that mantle.
Yeah, I think Sam represents the best aspects of what it means to be Captain America.
Right, and like I said, he's the fitting choice. Yeah, I felt like that was perfect. Right. And the other kind of like was Thor gave up being king of Asgard, or New Asgard as it was,
or king of the Asgardians.
Yeah, and he ended up moving on with the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right. Yeah, which is funny because like he gets like kind of like a cheese. Like, oh, the Asgardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah. I thought, and honestly, like I would love to see that, like the new Guardians of the Galaxy, if like him as Thor was with them. I think that'd be great.
Yeah. Although as great as that scene was,
like contractual stuff, and like we may not see him again, but I know there is going to be a Guardians of the Galaxy 3,
right?
And I kind of hope that maybe we'll see him in that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, again, it might just be a cameo, but still might. I still enjoy that. My only gripe about Thor was that I think that scene where he gives up being king of Asgard and gives the throne over to Valkyrie. It undoes everything that happened to him, the character growth that happens to him in Ragnarok.
Yeah, I think
Because
so.
his ultimate kind of like his ultimate destiny was to become a good king, and and his father recognized that he wasn't ready yet, and but at the end of Ragnarok, I think he was ready to be king, or he was ready to resign himself to be king. But with the events of Endgame, he kind of does like this kind of altruism thing where it's like, oh, it's time to stop being what I'm supposed to be and just be who I am. I I didn't like that because again, I think it undoes all of the character development that culminated, through the Thor movies and into Ragnarok. Because at the end, at the end of Ragnarok, he does accept his position as being king of the Asgardians.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like it does ruin that in a way. Um I mean, like I said, I kind of like the idea of him becoming one of the Guardians of the Galaxy because I think the interaction between those characters is hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right. Like that, it does kind of like. But I also wonder too if the idea of like what happened with Thanos and everything, and with the people that he cared about, like kind of going away and dying and stuff like that. Like I wonder if that really like hurt him to the point where it's like I can't do this anymore, and he's trying to like because after he beheaded Thanos, he kind of goes off into obscurity, and really he had already kind of like stopped being a king. Like he kind of like went into himself,
Right. I
um
mean, he was
and I
king
think
in
like
name only. Um,
right. Whereas like he's kind of doing the same thing, but like he's kind of like running away from things and like kind of giving up that to somebody else.
mhm.
And it's like where all the events that have taken place have affected him to the point where it's like I think he feels like he needs a like fresh start, and maybe that, like I said, that is a selfish thing,
Mhm.
but I think with everything that took place, like I think he maybe feels like he needs to like go away for a while.
But he didn't have to give up his kingship.
No, true.
Yeah, he could have
But
just
then
said
like
like, "Hey, I'm still down to be king, but the things that have happened, I just kind of need to step away from it a little bit, And I said, and just be like, hey, you've been doing such a great, to Val, because he gives it over to Valkyrie. And it's like, and so he could have just said like, hey, you're doing such a great job, those years that I wasn't, you really stepped up as a leader, those years that I wasn't, a good leader. So why don't hold down the fort for me.
true. Um, but yeah, I could see like that too is a point of weakness in
Hmm.
the story with Thor.
Right. Yeah, because like
Um,
even if he did that, he'd still be shirking his responsibilities.
yeah, I could just see like why like that's a part of like why he may have done that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like but I definitely agree with what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Word.
Well, moment of truth. What's your rating for the movie?
For the movie, you know what? Despite the flaws, I'm still gonna give this a 5.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Again, I completely recognize the flaws and maybe the plot holes or like the inconsistencies, but on the whole, it was such a satisfying conclusion. Like specific, especially for the characters, more or less. I'm gonna give it a 5.
I'm gonna give it slightly lower than that, but it's a 4.5 for me.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I think it's like I said, it's a great movie. It's a satisfying end to some of the characters that we know and love. And I'm actually kind of like now seeing the new Spider-Man trailer and seeing a post Endgame world and like how they deal with that. It looks like it's going to be a very interesting movie.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I saw the trailer last night, and the initial trailer wasn't that great, but having the benefit of watching Endgame and them now allowed to share a little bit more of what Far From Home is going to be like. I'm I guess the word would be excited to
Yeah,
see
I
what
am.
to see what comes next.
I'm pretty excited to see it as well.
Yeah, especially if they're gonna like start going into multiverse. But I hope they don't like bring back people that way because that would just like cheapen everything that they did. If there was like an alternate Tony Stark, an alternate Black Widow. Just don't do that.
Right. Well, the only one that like so far that there could be an alternate of is Loki.
Right, right, and that's within like the established events of Endgame.
Right. And that I'd be okay with because that would match up with
Right,
what they're
because
doing.
it was set up. It was set up. He teleports away with the Tesseract, so there could be an alternate Loki out there.
Right. But yeah, no, I'm probably gonna watch it again.
Hmm.
And
I would be
yeah,
down to watch it again as well.
yeah. So we might do that on Thursday. I'll keep you informed on that.
All right, the show.
But yeah,
All right.
great conclusion to the story. And yeah, it's kind of like it's almost like an end of an era in a sense.
Right. Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, Endgame and maybe Spider-Man: Far From Home might be the getting off point for the MCU. Particularly, because of the trajectory that it looked like it's gonna be going. Particularly, with Captain Marvel.
Ugh.
Um, that's not to say that I'm not. I'm gonna be stopping. I'm gonna stop watching MCU films altogether. I'm gonna be watch. I'm gonna watch Far From Home, but
We'll
and
see.
we'll see.
See how it
And then
goes.
if the Black Widow trailers look promising, I might check out one of those. I might check it out.
Yeah, we'll see how this new like set of Marvel films goes. I'm always interested in new stories and all that stuff. And if anything, I will say it has piqued my curiosity into some of the characters, and like I kind of want to like read more about them. And uh,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you have it. That was our review. I know we went really long tonight. I mean, we basically recapped the entire movie. Um, but safe to say that me and Robert both enjoyed this movie, and we definitely recommend it. Particularly
I would.
after you watch the entirety of the MCU thus far.
Yeah, if you're just like this is like you're just jumping in this into like the MCU for the first time at Endgame, uh not a great idea.
Right. I mean, not to say that you
'Cause
you know that you
can't enjoy it,
can't
but
enjoy it without having seen the entirety of the MCU. We're not that we're not necessarily saying that. It's but you'll enjoy it far more uh, if you do watch the other MCU movies as opposed to not.